create real value, and minimize harm. We must use rigorous methods, stay informed, be honest with society, and to do the first two things, we must learn, continue to learn, and we must earn public trust through continuing learning and responsible scholarship. Let us get a little deeper into the scholarly question of how to use AI responsibly as scholars. To advance social responsibility and to create social value through our research, we must have at least three things in respectable amounts when using AI. One, adequate knowledge. Two, adequate skills. And three, adequate or high ethical standards. To put it simply, if we can balance our knowledge, our skills, and our ethics, or ethical duty towards the society with the power of AI, then we are in a better position to be in the driver's seat. This doesn't mean that I must match the raw power, speed, or precision of AI. I cannot carry the load of an elephant. I cannot fly like an arrow. I cannot slice like a sword. But I must develop the knowledge, skill, and integrity to train the elephant, to aim the arrow, or to wield the sword. Otherwise, I risk letting increasingly forceful yet unaccountable mix of brute strength, blind speed, and stunning precision to take over my thinking, writing, and responsibility towards society. So let's unpack the knowledge dimension, one, which is foundational to responsible and effective use of AI in research and scholarship. To use AI effectively and responsibly, we need enough knowledge. We need to be the researcher. If we want to call AI the research assistant, let us make sure we are the researcher. So when an undergraduate students tell me, oh, AI is a research assistant, I say, so you are the research professor? In order to have a research assistant, you must be a researcher, mustn't you? I cannot be a farmer, and I cannot say, okay, this is my engineering assistant. Like, no, you're not an engineer. I cannot be a doctor, and I cannot say, this is my philosopher assistant. Wait a second, how much philosophy do you know, doctor? So there is this simple gap. When you say, this is a research assistant, the research assistant cannot be 10 times more knowledgeable than you. Your elephant is driving you. You're running behind a car. You are cutting yourself with a sword. And so, let us not look like this dumb researcher who's asking a dumb question. Garbage in, garbage out. So here's how emerging scholars might stay in the zone of safety. Say that AI tools' ability to generate text that meets communicative needs keep rising vertically from zero upwards on y-axis, and say that your ability as a scholar to judge the text generated by AI moves in the direction as you advance in your PhD. First year, second year, third year, fourth year. Now, you could say, if you draw the line in the middle, let's call it the line of optimal but risky use of AI. Because you can knowledgeably judge AI content if you're staying somewhere in the middle and not going too far into the danger zone. But as my graduate assistant, a computer science student from India, who helped me to create this visual last year when he and I were creating another workshop together for graduate students, the line in the middle can also be called the line of paradox. We don't know what we don't know. It's called the learner's paradox, or the curse of knowledge. And AI tools are confident as crazy uncles. We can also call this the learner's paradox in the sense that AI tools are less useful if we already know or can do what AI tools can do already, and AI tools are more useful if we don't know, but you're always in this paradox. If you already know, it's not so useful. If you don't know, it's useful but risky. Navigating that line of paradox requires what I call the critical AI literacy. As one of the speakers who is going to speak by Zoom tomorrow, Professor Mahabali from Egypt, that's kale. The other kale is K-A-L-E. Doctoral students, you may not like kale, but eat some vegetables. You got the joke. So you have to grapple with the paradox. So if somebody wants to create a black and white argument and say, oh, you're opposing AI because AI is useful, you don't know yet, come with me. Let's go a little deeper into the knowledge. I said, without the politics and economics, please don't convince me with your computer science. We need critical AI literacy to navigate that political and economic landscape. So this is the knowledge map when somebody plugged in all of the journal articles published around the world in a global map. And I want the Vice President to see this, because as a university leader, that's where we are. There are two problems with this map. First, countries like Morocco are not in this map. And we need to catch up and be in this map. And the faculty development workshop that we're doing is to be on that map. We're going to produce a few hundred articles in the next few years so that our journal article publication will get us on that map. But second, this is a terrible map. We also need to learn to create new kinds of map. Because this map only is created by plugging journal articles produced in particular index journals, not the journal that we publish here. And obviously not the kinds of knowledge that we produce and use to run our life, society, and community here. Based on some internet research, I learned about rich forms of knowledge in Morocco, in its traditions like, and this is very simple internet research. It might take a few months for me to learn about this topic, and I'm not going to ask ChatGPT, because I haven't had a good experience of trying to learn about Morocco through ChatGPT. It has very, very, very shallow and wrong information about Morocco. But this is Google, okay? I learned that there's a tradition called Balka, public storytelling, Hikayat, oral narrative, Malhoun, poetic songs, and artisanal crafts and traditional ecological practices, forms transmitted through apprenticeship, oral memory, and communal performance rather than academic publication. If we were to make the map of all of those things, then Africa would be fatter than America. You got the joke again. We would be big, as we deserve to be. So, there are two problems with the map, right? This is why I hate black and white simplistic thinking that comes from technocratic parts of our academic landscape. We need to learn to look at the history of AI and the economics of AI and the politics of AI and see why we are creating this map. As if that previous map was not bad, now look at this map. I couldn't find a full map of data input. I could only find one data point, which is that the total amount of data input from the continent or about the continent of entire Africa is 1%, according to a study by New York University researchers. But even if you simply look at the data use, this is where the advancement of AI is happening. We're still not on the map. This is AI investment. And if the money, that it tells us, the design tells us, if the money and the power and the decisions and the epistemic and political and geopolitical and economic interests are coming from these spots, we are not getting on the map either. So, let's take a few minutes. Most people believe that AI has access to all digitized, internet-connected information. Not true. AI knows very little beyond the dominant world. For example, the 1% data about Africa. Imagine 18% of global landmass, 20% of global population, and 54 countries on the continent of Africa. Not to mention the cradle of human civilization with thousands of languages, cultures, and epistemologies. Where is that map? The limitation is not just geographic, but also political, as we saw, and epistemic, if you think about the map of knowledge. And which knowledge? Not just article knowledge. Most people, the knowledge exists in thousands of languages, but AI depends on just a few. Beyond the internet, much of the knowledge system is embodied in practice and traditions and unwritten rules, which AI cannot reach. Heck, AI does not even have access to more than 3% of journal databases like JSTOR, EBSCO, Elsevier. So when it pretends to know everything, just look at, cross-check what it is saying with an actual journal article, an actual book, and it will tell you, oh, by the way, I made it up. On the side of the patterns of thought, there is another problem. It also thinks like a particular man from a particular part of the world. Why? It thinks in lists. Do you all go about medicine and art and engineering and economic thinking in lists? Is list a very normal, natural, everyday practice? We don't think in lists. I'm a scholar of rhetoric. We think in hundreds of ways. And in different cultures, patterns are different. And it does not represent patterns of knowledge or content of knowledge. So, the reliance on whatever is dominant risks erasing or distorting non-Western knowledge and undermining education's role in solving local social problems around the world. We are led to believe that AI knows everything, or it knows a lot, because it is designed to perform like it. Just ask the best image generating tool, DALL-E. I have access to most of the most advanced tools by paying monthly subscriptions, and I use them. Just ask one of your best AI image generating tools, can you create an image of a Moroccan worker going to work? And then tell me how much it knows and how it thinks. So, beyond that simple idea of epistemology, let's look at the politics and economics. There are direct harms of AI, such as exploitation of labor, physical and mental, extraction and depletion of natural resources, especially in less economically dominant countries, destruction of natural habitats, and impacts on people's health due to extreme levels of use of energy and water and natural resources. All the impacts happen at a far larger scale in the global south than they do in the global north. For example, in the Nigerian countryside, a teacher may be saying, hey, ask ChatGPT, everything, it knows everything. But in the countryside, in a city, the teacher may be bragging about ChatGPT. But in the countryside, the lands are extracted, the water is redirected, the energies are not supplied to the people. And in that situation, we cannot say in the luxury of cities, universities, comfort, as privileged scholars, that it isn't. Every time you generate a text about a bottle of water is burned in the process of cooling the machines. So, there are global knowledge, politics, and social impacts on people and planet, and the excited computer scientists may be distracting us from. They are serious scholarly issues insofar as seeking the truth that is contextually useful, knowledge that will make us respectable. Let's move on a little faster. I'm going to start wrapping up. Let's apply the understanding about research and AI to the context of research and knowledge making. How does a doctoral student determine that his use of AI tools, which promise him to help him to do all of the many things that he needs as a writer and researcher, are making his scholarship worse rather than better? Let us look at the simple list of functions of a scholar. As a scholar, the nature and purpose of your research is to be driven by curiosity, passion, and purpose. That is not only to figure out something for yourself, but to give that knowledge, that finding, that discovery to the society to solve real-world problems. It is not to generate a 120-page or 230-page long document and get paid away. The evidence that you find should be from actual investigation to find out reality, not a pattern of words that seem very plausible. The thought must be novel. I read a book, Rebooting AI, by Gary Marcus. It actually shows that AI has the massive ability, better than us, to do inductive and deductive reasoning. But then the best research starting from Newton to this day does not come from inductive or deductive logic. It comes from abductive reasoning. Pure, intuitive human guesswork. Seeing connections among dots in ways the machines so far are not able to do. And then there's intellectual integrity. Even if the machines become capable of inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning, we need to show citations. We need to show trust. We need to be accountable to our peers and public. We need to show contextual sensitivity and cultural awareness. And finally, we are trying to become someone through our PhD. Not to do something, but to be someone. Someone who aims to advance knowledge, empower people, improve society, and create an identity. So when I talk to an undergraduate student who generated a research paper and gave it to me, I need to be able to look in the eye and say, can you look in my eyes and say, you can talk about this topic without your AI. Can you talk to your granny about your topic on the phone without the text? Can you level with me? Because I tell my students, when you use AI and when I use AI, there's a tiny difference. You know what it is? I have read a few thousand more articles on that topic than you. There's a difference when I use AI and you use AI. I've read dozens of books on that topic. And if you keep that in mind, you're going to use AI much more responsibly. So number two, to be brief, if we master the research skills, the data skills, the analytical skills, the computing skills, the fieldwork skills, the lab work skills, the specimen collection skills, the observation skills, if we develop all of these skills, then maybe we'll be able to deal with this increasingly agentive robot that can pretend to do everything for us. So one simple technique, now you might be thinking, what is this all lecture about? What are the actual skill sets? If you're taking a very simple skill set called prompt engineering, a lot of people just use one-shot prompting without input. Of course, input is dangerous, as Professor Babu was saying earlier. But still, if you don't provide, and there's another conundrum, if you don't provide input, it is not going to think in ways that you need to. If you provide input, then it may take your data and train itself. In any case, if you don't give it context, if you don't give it background, if you don't give it a role, right, then that response will be shallow. If you don't make it multi-shot, back and forth, if you don't say, what was your pattern of thought? Where did you find this source? Can you give me the link? Where is the full text? Anyway, I'm going to skip that. You may say that some of the dumber tasks can be given to AI like these. But what is dumb and what is not dumb, it's very difficult to determine. You may say these are relatively dumb, these are slightly smart, these are smarter, and these are the smartest things. And I should never give the last ones, and I can give the first ones. But even if you go to these actually dumb tasks, there is always an amount of risk. Right? Risk is very contextual. It is not universal. Somebody says, oh, you can let AI do the editing. Not really. Sometimes at the level of editing, you're trying to get the most fine-tuned idea in the way that you actually want. So when you ask an AI tool to edit, I don't believe that. There is no such thing as lower order thinking and higher order thinking. It depends on what the purpose was, the context was. So if you look at all of these variables, there's no dumb task, really. You can say there are relatively dumb tasks given condition 1, 2, and 3. But if you take out the conditions and make a universal principle out of dumb tasks, there's no dumb task. If you focus on writing, there were before AI really bad ideas. I'm currently editing a book titled Bad Ideas About Writing and AI. There are 60 chapters from scholars around the United States. But we're building on a previous book called Bad Ideas About Writing. And now we are writing a book called Bad Ideas About Writing and AI. And according to some of the bad ideas, one, that writing is linear. You go in a one-way traffic, it's over. Not true. It's always recursive. 2, writing is transient. You finish learning and it's over. Nope. If that was the case, you would finish learning to write in 4th grade and you would never need to learn writing skills thereafter. That is not true. You continue to write new kinds of learning, new genres, new content, new purpose, new audience throughout your life. Transparency. That if you know the content, then you can sit down and write, anybody can write. Not true. It's very, you cannot never separate the dancer from the dance. Writing from the content. The hierarchy myth, the order, right? Higher order, lower order. The content myth, that the form and content is different. Style myth, that good style is what you need. That is exactly why AI is fooling people. The genius myth, some people are born genius, not true. When we study writing in the field of writing studies, there are hundreds of books, thousands of articles, none of these are true. But these are common perceptions among the public, among university leaders, among graduate students, and among faculty across the disciplines. Now what happens when you bring AI into this? The bad ideas get on steroids. They go crazy. The linearity issue, AI will help you skip through some of the process. Or the transience issue, you don't need to learn at all. The transparency issues, AI does better writing than human beings can do. The hierarchy myth, it's okay to let it do the dumb tasks. The content myth, AI knows it all. You don't need to. Look how much worse they become. It's like taking a dog and turning into a monster. Style myth, AI can write in any style. The genius myth, you just need prompting skills and anybody is an engineer or doctor. So, we are in this really, really, really dangerous landscape. Let me wrap up. Research and scholarship is not just one thing. If you look at it, it is so many, 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 many things, right? And as I think Professor Babra was saying earlier, it involves, he said 11, I could make 50 as a writing teacher. But then what happens when we go to the AI tools? There are tools that will do all of these things. There are actually, for each of these functions, I found these many tools. And I've tested about half of them. So there's no lack of tools. They're actually custom designed now. Not only generic tools like ChatGPT, but specialized tools. But what about the ethics? What can graduate students do to take the responsibility? Let me wrap up with that third dimension. Someone who levels with other scholars in the discipline and society by earning and maintaining trust and credibility, and perhaps by also being recognized as a scholar in that field among the public. The question is, how can you use AI to engage others in your field beyond in a way that doesn't destroy your credibility? Here are a few of these common sense strategies. One, unless AI systems fundamentally change and stop generating and stop claiming what they don't know and start telling us, I don't know this, I'm not the right tool, you need to actually consult the real world data, unless they start doing that, we are not going to be good scholars by using plausible content. Second, it's about credibility. Credit. If you are earning credit for something that you didn't do, that is another problem with AI that we need to solve, ethics-wise. Credibility. How are you going to gain credibility, be trusted? Where is AI undermining your credibility? Contribution. What are you contributing? And what portion of the contribution was AI's contribution? Craft. Have you developed the craft for a lifetime? Care. How much does your research and the transparency and the credibility show that you care about that topic? If you don't come off as a passionate researcher, then there is a gap. So, in order to overcome double standards, I mentioned do no harm, I mentioned accountability, I mentioned transparency. Let me stop with this visual. If you can ask the question when you're using AI, do I have enough knowledge to judge this content? If the answer is yes, you can ask the second question. If the answer is no, please learn more about that topic. Otherwise, you're like the skinny guy and the fat man is slumping you and you're flying the sky. Second question, is this AI-generated response accurate? You're able to ask the second question only if you are qualified for the first. Third question depends on the second, fourth depends on the third, and so on and so forth. I'll be using this as part of our workshop in the next few days, and I will wrap up there. I think I made it in 40 minutes.